Welcome to the Cincy Postcast, powered by Gold Star, Cincinnati's favorite match day meal. I'm Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Streetside Brewery, the best damn brewery in the city. That's right, putting my foot down. There you go. There's the claim. Located in the Columbia Tusculum neighborhood over on the east side of Cincinnati, they have a beer for everyone. I promise you, they have a wide variety. One of the widest varieties of beers that you will find anywhere, all made by the same brewery, Streetside. They do a really, really good job there. The brewery is an awesome place to go check out. They've always got food from a food truck out there as well. It's a really good time. And one of my favorite things about Streetside, there's always an event going on. So on December 17th, gotta call this one out for you. There is a snow globe workshop for $30 a person. You too can actually go and make your own snow globe. They promise no crafting experience needed. Look, you need a last second homemade gift. Here you go. You've been gifted a gift for somebody else. So snow globe workshop on the 17th, starts at 6 p.m. Go check them out. Streetside Brewery, great folks. When you're there, maybe mention the postcast, get a buck off of your beer when you're there. But otherwise, enjoy the lovely beer, enjoy the atmosphere, and maybe use the code. So a huge thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. Oh, and on today's episode, there's a little bit to get into. In part one, we're talking MLS Cup final TV numbers. The latest with Kevin Denkey. Will he ever stop scoring? Hopefully not. But also, hey man, leave a couple of goals for Cincinnati. You know, we could use a couple of those things too next year. We have a date for the season opener and a couple more FC Cincinnati news tidbits in part two. And for the majority of this episode, it is a conversation with Carter Chapley covering FC Cincinnati. It's a really good conversation. We always love having Carter on the podcast. And then in part three, we answer a few more of your Patreon questions, put it together, and you have yourselves a very mid-December postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I'm joined by two gentlemen who also didn't watch MLS Cup final, joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Chief, I actually don't know that. Did you watch MLS Cup?
I actually did watch MLS Cup final.
Okay,
so,
nice.
Yeah, their numbers are clearly off because I don't do things that are unpopular.
They missed you. I'll say I watched the second half. Grayson, did you watch MLS Cup final?
No.
And neither did anybody else, allegedly.
Well, yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm looking at a podcast where over 66% of the people collected here watched MLS Cup. That's a lot.
Representative sample.
Right.
Strong. Obviously, gosh, this would be very confusing if somebody was listening to this. No, this is the most recent episode. We are only talking about this because the numbers came out for MLS Cup final viewership, and they were not good, Chief. They were not good. Do we panic about these numbers? What's your feeling on this? Should we be freaking out?
No, because I still don't fully understand the methodology that they're claiming for how they get the Apple TV numbers here. And famously, Apple TV and MLS do not release any of the numbers on there. Apple TV doesn't release the numbers for any show that it does, any movie that it does, any piece of content that it does. I don't know. I don't know that I care. And to the extent that I care, they already get the money from their TV deal, and we've talked at length about what the problems are with visibility of the league, with what's going on with the league's, casual viewership numbers. I'm not worried about it. And then, like, if I was worried about it, like, I find the conversation disingenuous in this regard, and that's that what was the alternative to signing with Apple TV? Like,
Right.
the numbers for all the arguments that get made about this online are just disingenuous because no one was offering the money Apple was. And when you say, oh, other soccer leagues have, better TV deals in the United States, it's like, yeah, because all their games are in the morning because they're from Europe. And that's inventory in the programming day that other networks don't have accounted for. But no one was bidding big dollars to televise MLS matches in prime time. Maybe if they moved their kickoffs to 9 a.m., maybe there'd be more money involved in it. But it is what it is. And until somebody tells me that there's panic happening at either Apple or MLS, I'm inclined to believe this is just a bunch of TV and sports media blogs looking for clicks.
I remember when the criticism or the pre-criticism of MLS Cup was that like USL and NWSL were both having their finals on free over-the-air, non-paywalled TV, and then and it showed how bad the Apple deal was or whatever, and then pretty soon after that, MLS announced they were putting the final on TV. And now people are using the TV only numbers, and something I don't really understand, like you guys said, like, I don't really understand what they're doing to try to say like what the Apple numbers are. I don't understand the methodology they're using to approximate the Apple numbers. I'm not sure it's worth trying to explain, but like just the TV numbers were like pretty competitive with those other leagues that were not going up against the SEC championship.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the Apple number was pretty big, not like in absolute terms, but pretty big in comparison to the TV number, like, potentially up to equal.
Right.
And then other advantages the Apple TV deal is that it's a global deal. So no matter where you are in the world, you can watch this on the same format. And so I think there's a lot of people who are trying to find excuses to attack the Apple deal. And I am not saying I'm not like saying anything about it. One way or the other, except for I think probably it was the best. It was the best offer that they had at the time for a deal. They weren't really growing the league by putting games on TV, and so Apple saw value. The league saw value of pairing with Apple. People can complain about all they want, but I think you can't really evaluate the effect of the Apple deal until, we're 5 years in. Because you have to get people used to looking out, like searching out the games on this platform.
Yeah.
And it's also, they've acknowledged there's problems with it. They've acknowledged that the uniform start time is problems. This was just the first year of all this. It's going to be tweaked. We know that.
Second year, right?
Yeah.
Second year. Okay. So we're early on in the process still. Like
they're a 10-year deal. Yeah.
A 10-year deal. It's just every sports league is dealing with this. The NBA's ratings are catastrophically bad right now. The NBA's ratings, I think I saw off 48% from a year ago.
Yeah.
And like the entire league and the media sphere around the NBA is panicking and having existential crises about kids shoot too many 3-point shots. Steph Curry ruined basketball. No one takes mid-range jumpers. It's the death of big man and post-up play. And they're dealing with the same thing. And they aren't even behind a paywall like FC Cincinnati is. We still don't know who's televising the Reds games this upcoming year. It could very well be just through MLB TV, where you're going to have to pay behind a paywall and watch and sign up for a streaming service that's done through your phone. And we'll get the same things. Well, how do you watch at bars and how will you see these games? And it's like, I think, I know he's a villain, but I think Don Garber said it right. It's like, look, we're confident we made the right choice. And the only question really is, did we move a lot earlier than the market or just a little earlier than the market? Because this is kind of the future here.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got NFL Sunday tickets going for like $500-600 a pop through Google or whatever. It's like,
which is also raising its prices right now. Like YouTube TV just went up by another $9.
Yes. So the not behind a paywall is becoming even more expensive. Now, to get to the point that you both have touched on here, I'm going to just read 2 sentences from this awfulannouncing.com article, which I will say Awful Announcing is usually very good. It's an amusing name for what they actually do here. But the 2 sentences are this. Don't worry about the context. You just need this part. Compared to the previous Saturday in the same time slot, Apple had 222,000 viewers. Do the math, and you can estimate that only about 65,000 viewers were watching MLS Cup Final on Apple streaming. I just like that they can just say the phrase "do the math" and just say 65,000.
Right.
What's the math? What is that math? Maybe there's perfectly good sound logic behind it. They did not explain it here or link to where I can understand the math.
Right. It's like, just do the math. It's like, if you don't know the math, I can't help you with that.
And by the way, the 222,000 is an estimate from Nielsen. So it's not even like an actual published number that then we were assuming some percentage of went to MLS. Very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird.
I don't know. It's just, but like... with a lot of this stuff, there is a group of people out there that think the Apple TV deal is the worst thing MLS could have possibly done. And there's a large overlap of people that also think pro-rel should exist in this league. And it's just, they are people that just exist to be mad perpetually, that are mad about TV numbers of a game they didn't even watch. And it's just, I don't care. I legitimately don't care. And until someone tells me that it's catastrophic and they're going to cancel the TV deal and there will be no one that will actually pay to televise this league, until I hear that from someone or that kind of panic, I'm just going to assume that this is all nonsense with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. MLS back in the day had their own MLS app, and you could pay for their out of market games directly from them for like $75 on MLS Kick TV or something like that. I think worst case scenario, they just go back to doing that just without Apple. So
yeah, they got worked. I will say though, like they do have work to do.
Oh,
and I think there's a lot of very simple and a couple of not so simple things they can do to make the product better. I don't know.
They need to build up the ecosystem around it.
Well, yeah.
Like part of what, you know, engages people with a sports league is the various, you know, programming that's based around it. And MLS doesn't really have that.
Right.
I mean, they have the kind of unexciting studio content that they do that is kind of an outgrowth of what they were doing on MLSsoccer.com before the Apple deal. I mean, it's a lot of the same people.
But also somehow fewer people.
Right. And then it does seem they're trying to figure, and you end up with stuff like where, you know, Matt Doyle is doing a MLS Cup preview on Extra Time by himself.
Yeah. Like what?
Yeah. Like,
no matter how
that is, I mean, that is something that like you might take pause for if you were MLS a little bit, if you saw these numbers. It's one of those things when you screwed up a test when you were a kid, sometimes your parents would ask you, well, was this your best effort? And then you've got to sheepishly look down and be like, no, it wasn't. I was, you know, playing Nintendo instead of studying. And I'm like, yeah, was this your best effort, MLS, at promoting MLS Cup? Do you think that you did everything you could to generate interest in this game or grow this game or make this game an event that people were excited to tune in for? Did you leverage being in LA for 2 weeks prior to the game and doing content in LA, offering things to media, like getting your people out there, hyping the game up, breaking the game down? Do you think that's your best effort? I would bet the answer is no.
And a lot of times they try to pull in these like other soccer people who are primarily not interested in MLS. They're interested in other soccer leagues. And they're like, well, you've got an audience. We're going to have you come and talk about MLS or whatever. And like half the time, like they're just not convincingly interested. Right. Like they're there. And like I watched a clip of I apologize for not knowing like who these people are, but I watched a clip from CBS Golazo today where some English guy was asking Tom Bogert about stuff that clearly was probably not for like primarily like MLS sicko audience, because it felt more like stuff that was covered like a couple weeks ago already. Yeah. But he was asking about the some of the signings, and like Denkey was brought up, and he talked about, you know, how does this relate to the perception that MLS is a retirement league where you're just getting a final paycheck? And like, I don't feel like people should, like, if anybody's been paying attention, anybody pays attention to the league would be necessarily asking that question right in December 2024. Like, there are retirement signings, just like there are in a lot of leagues.
Right.
But like, there's been, you know, that youth movement up, in particularly out of South America, right? With a lot of these guys coming, and it just seems like, you know, it's a question that you would have gotten like 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And there's been really no movement, I guess, in how they're covering the league in these kind of general soccer interest programs.
Yeah. The retirement league thing is so funny because, yeah, outside of whatever the hell Miami is allowed to do, it doesn't really seem to be like, it's been a while since we've had a player like that. I guess Royce and Forsberg are in that category.
Olivier Giroud.
Mm-hmm. Sure. But yeah, I mean, so many more of the players and the best players, like those guys came, and Forsberg was good, but Royce wasn't. Giroud wasn't.
The LAs are making these retirement signings, but they're also making really good signings.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like Galaxy signed Royce, right? But they also signed like Ricky Puig at like what, 22?
Right.
Like Royce was like Gabriel Peck, Joseph Paintsil. Like, these are not retirement signings.
No. If anything, Royce was Puig's like backup in MLS Cup. Like, he had to go play that role, which is very weird. And yeah, we've talked about it before. There's a million things MLS could be doing on the streaming service itself as a way to get people to sign up and whatever else. But yeah, just weird programming decisions. But yeah, the numbers out were funny. Like this, we had to touch on it, right? Yeah. They were pretty funny. Where do we want to go next? We got a couple of topics here to hit on before we get to our interview with Carter. Chief, where do you want to go next?
Dealer's choice. You're the host of the show.
Okay.
You introduce yourself as the host, and we're always the people accompanying you. So you make the choice.
I have made a conscious effort not to call myself the host the last 3 months. Kevin Denkey is where I want to go next. Denkey has scored his third final goal for Cercle Bruges before heading over to FC Cincinnati. It did feel like every time he stepped on the field or played, this was his final farewell to the fans. And then we got one more.
It's like a Rolling Stones tour at this point.
Yeah. How many retirement last tours? Motley Crue feels like they go on a end of their career blowout tour every summer.
It was like there were these, when I was growing up and going to Myrtle Beach as a kid, they had all these like shitty beachwear stores that they'd have down on there.
Yes.
And they'd have big signs up that would say going out for business.
Yes.
So you would think as you drove by that the store was closing, but no, the same one would be back next year, also going out for business.
But at least in this way, Denkey cannot stop scoring goals. He scored the equalizer today against Ghent. I think I've got the right Gen team there. And yeah, he scored in Europa Conference League, and yeah, he's been on fire since it was announced he was signing for FC Cincinnati. Chief, did you know it was possible for a player who is going to be transferred to another team to actually still contribute to his current team?
I was told that he's now our property because we've submitted an accepted bid, and I, for one, don't like them using up all these goals for not FC Cincinnati. I'm happy he's saying goodbye. Like it seems like there should be no complaints from Kevin that he wasn't able to go out on his terms from Cercle Bruges. There should be no complaints from their fans that he didn't give them everything there was to have on this as a result of his play. So as far as I'm concerned, if there's a karma bank, we have made a significant deposit into the International Football Karma Bank by allowing him to continue just being electric for his current team.
Yes.
At the risk of something awful happening that I don't even want to contemplate.
Yeah. To that point, Grace, I think you've been more on this than anybody else. December 15th, is this the final time we should expect Denkey to be playing for Cercle Bruges?
Well, I think he has made his official farewell on social media.
Thanked the fans. We love that.
Yep. And I think that they had a sign for him in the away section today.
Oh, nice.
I think that what tripped me up originally was that there was a post about it being his last game, and it did specify like final home league game. And that was like 4 games ago. But that December 15th date was reported out by Belgian media some time ago. And so, yeah, I think this is it. Hopefully he gets a break. And I don't know, I guess we don't have when camp starts or whatever, but we have the date of Champions League. So feels like, pretty soon he's gonna have to dial it up again. Yeah. I think, as they say in Belgium, the bullet is through the church on this one. All right. Yep. So he's on his way to Cincinnati. I mean, I assume sometime this week. I don't know how that works. Maybe he's got some time to spend with the family in Belgium or France or wherever he may be based. But yeah, to that point, kind of a perfect transition here. Laurel Pfahler skeeting out on Blue Sky here. February 19th will be the season opener for FC Cincinnati at Motagua. And then they come back on 6:30 p.m. February 26th. But that first one is a 10 p.m. kickoff. Boy.
Nothing like the old 10 o'clock on a weeknight kick. That's the magic of CONCACAF Champions League, is the 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. And that's your first fix of FC Cincinnati for the calendar year 2025.
I just love comparing that to like Reds opening day. It's just the exact opposite vibes.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's great in this regard, because like if this game was being played in like May on Wednesday at 10, it would be super annoying. But since it's the first game, you're not going to not watch the first game. You're not going to not watch Kevin Denkey's debut with FC Cincinnati. So, yeah, I guess the only question is, where are we watching it?
Oh,
TBD.
10 o'clock's late, Desk. on a Wednesday. I don't know how many bars will be open at the end of that match.
I don't know. We run it back. We'll do another live show to kick it off somewhere. Maybe gentlemen, 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Give people time to get home.
Yeah.
Right.
And then watch the game someplace else.
Yeah, they'll go somewhere else because that's super late. Don't do that to the bar staff.
Right. Just sit around watching a soccer game on a bootleg broadcast somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how we'll be able to watch these games. Do we know? I think
it's still Fox Sports still has the contract for this. But the only question is whether or not they'll cut February. They may be cutting to college basketball if this game runs too late.
College basketball, there may, yeah,
like bull riding or something like that. I don't know. That's almost too late. That's almost too late to cut to a college game afterwards. It's like, what do you? Because your West Coast tip-offs will probably be around that same time, 10 o'clock. So,
yeah, damn. I may just have to watch this whole damn match. Huh? Oh, boy.
Come on. Live from Honduras to see the debut of one of the most electric young players to join MLS. Transfer fee record.
Predict the game right now, Grayson. Do we win or lose this game?
We win the game.
Chief?
Win. Dub.
Yeah.
Club dub.
Okay. Good. We're calling it now. December 15th, we win this game. The post gives all 3 thumbs ups here.
A lot can happen in 2 months.
Let's see how Motagua loads up on talent now that they've made.
If Motagua has a big January window, we may be in trouble.
They signed Cucho, and all of a sudden,
I'll allow it. I'm fine
for
with
one
that.
game. That'll be fun.
Get out of the CONCACAF Champions Cup early and also make our rival worse. Yeah, done.
Oh God, I guess I've got some late breaking news here.
Uh-oh.
I do want to mention this here. Liga MX commissioner Mikel Arreola was given some on-field interviews during the Apertura final. And when asked about Leagues Cup, he said, and I'm using the translation here from Ben Wright of Broadway Soccer and covers Nashville. He says, quote, "We have just approved the new Leagues Cup format. We are no longer going to concentrate there. We are going to play during the week. We are not going to interrupt the Liga MX. We are not going to interrupt the Liga MX, fortunately, because the request of the clubs was very clear." You add this to what Philly said about how they weren't participating in the Leagues Cup, and Chris Albright seemingly confirming that not all of the MLS teams would be in Leagues Cup. We're in for a very radically different looking Leagues Cup in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of it'll be very interesting to see what the MLS schedule looks like this year, because there's been a lot of different little breadcrumbs that would lead you to believe this is going to be a very different looking MLS schedule. I think Don Garber indicated that the league will be doing some sort of pause during the Club World Cup, given that so many of these games are being hosted all these games are being hosted in the United States. So it would not surprise me if the league does go on a 2 to 3 week break, but that the 2 to 3 week break occurs during the Club World Cup, and they play through what they would have otherwise played during Leagues Cup, and then Leagues Cup becomes a midweek tournament. Because also the way that the quotes on the MLS side have been sort of lumping CONCACAF Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, and Open Cup together as, it's too challenging for our teams to play all of these competitions. Yeah. Which would lead me to believe that Leagues Cup is going to be going to a format of some sort that more closely emulates the way international cup tournaments work all the time, which is, your midweek matches that are part of whatever that schedule is.
Yeah. And The interesting comment there about we are no longer going to concentrate there. Maybe that just means traveling to the U.S. midweek, but it could open up the door to matches in Mexico.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, no. I think that's probably just a miss. Yeah, go ahead, Grayson.
So when they so they had to like stay in the U.S. for the duration of Leagues Cup,
right?
And so I think what they are talking about is going back and forth. So like putting the Leagues Cup games midweek and then going back and playing Liga MX on the weekend, maybe. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, I feel like the Leagues Cup tournament, at least initially, is primarily meant to be, based in the U.S.
Yeah,
but maybe that'll change. I feel like there was another article, maybe ESPN, talking about there being only 18 MLS teams in Leagues Cup this year, and that would match with what Ernst Tanner said. Especially if those 18 teams are the MLS playoff teams, right, and then the non-playoff teams play an Open Cup. Like that would kind of make sense because it'd be 12 MLS teams in Open Cup, which I think was more than there were last year.
Yeah,
and 18 in Leagues Cup, which there's also 18 Liga MX teams. So
I am curious too if, with reducing the number of teams in Leagues Cup, I am curious if they'll keep the format the same with like group stages and group stage matches, or if it will move to something that's just more akin to a straight knockout style tournament where you seed the brackets and everybody do home and away legs or something else other than that. I guess it wouldn't, if it's all in the United States, it wouldn't even be home and away legs. I don't know. But like, does it still make sense if you're doing a full season tournament or an in-season tournament to run group stages, to run it the same way it was before, or is this an opportunity to tweak the format a little bit to something that gets done a little quicker?
Since they were already 3-team groups, and then I think a round of 32 to start the knockout rounds.
Yeah,
you could still do 3-team groups here. It would be 12 groups of 3. If top 2 advance, that's 24. I mean, the World Cup used to be 24 teams. You could have like 8 buys.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
I don't know. It's primarily
based on where you finish in the standings.
Yeah. The Garber also mentioned wanting to get more MLS versus Liga MX matches. And so I drafted up what a 32 team knockout tournament would be, seeded opposite MLS Liga MX. So you would have the number 1 MLS team would play the worst Liga MX team and then just flip-flop all the way back down. Uh-huh. You end up with a fairly balanced and interesting bracket, I think. So there could be something along those lines as well, especially if you've evened it out. You don't need to worry about weird little groups. And since you're already reducing the number of teams, you probably have already convinced Apple that you can do a reduced number of televised games.
Yeah, so it's a TV product at the end of the day. So like whatever it is that's going to generate inventory and generate eyeballs is probably the direction it's going to go.
Yeah. So something to keep an eye on as we continue through this week. And I know the schedule, I think, was due out December 19th. So we'll get to keep our eyes peeled for that one. And then finally, to wrap us up here in part 1, always exciting to bring this up, is the Gold Star moment of the week. Obviously, the team is not playing. So our moment this week was the post asking who you got, predict the next big transfer for FC Cincinnati. So we did something similar where it's sort of your dream signing or dream player. In this case, I want the prediction for the next big transfer. I've got a couple of good ones here that I liked. Redbeard, always a good sight to see here, saying Sai. Sadly, it'll probably be Lucho's outbound transfer. That was a bummer. I really like this one though, in a similar part. Ryan Vossler on X saying Lucho to River Plate. I really like the idea of giving Lucho his big transfer away back home in Argentina, but he has to play for Boca's biggest rivals.
Hey, they don't want him. That's the perfect villain arc right there, right?
Would be very funny. Dutch FCC fan did not give us a Dutch answer, said Junior Moreno, which honestly, respect. That would be a really good signing. It's my understanding he is not been picked up by Houston. I don't know if he's free agent eligible, but they did not. Junior Moreno.
Oh yeah, he's a free agent.
He's a free agent? Okay. He was not protected in the expansion draft. Stank Daddy saying backup goalie coming in next. Stank Daddy, we've got too many goalies as it is. If anything, one of them's probably going to go. Keith Link says going to be a center back. In or out? Only Keith knows. I really like this one though. Cheese hashtag Nancy out, which is a great username here. Probably some guy from a team that no one can point to on a map that comes in and wins MVP for 2025.
Yeah.
That feels right.
That feels right. Yeah. No, the next move from this team is going to be a guy from a club you've never heard of, that you've never seen. Then you get hype watching his YouTube videos set to techno music. And hopefully the highlight video is better than shooting directly at the keeper and being easily saved.
That's only for expansion draft players. One last one here. Carlos Rotondi. This comes from Augen76. Carlos Rotondi, 27 years old, Argentine, left wing back / midfielder. Yeah, Augen, that sounds exactly like the kind of guy that might be going out.
Yeah, he wins. He made a specific prediction of a name right there. I like that.
It's pretty good. Is that our winner? It feels like a good winner to me.
Yeah, it seems like the winner.
It seems like somebody actually did some real research with this question. Although I do want to give a shout out to, you did not read this one, Kevin, but I think this was also a very good one. Give credit to Ultra Gary, Nick Hagland.
Nick Hagland, Yamil Assad. Yeah, these would be good sightings.
I dig that. That's good shit right there.
Oh, I love it. So there you go. That's your Gold Star shining moment of the week. Is an actual prediction. Again, Carlos Rotondi. I'm going to go look him up and see.
I will say my Gold Star shining moment of the week was I actually went to Gold Star and had a chili burger for lunch on Saturday. Phenomenal. I can't believe I waited this long.
Of course. No, I'm not gonna. I'll save that comment for off air. I've got another comment that I can't mention. So, is there anything else we need to touch on before we jump on over to part 2?
This truly does feel like the off season. It feels like we're about due to review a movie here pretty soon because there's not a lot going on with the FC here.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So let's get on over to part 2. This is where we had a lovely conversation with Carter Chapley covering FC Cincinnati on the team website, on the app. Good stuff here. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And then after the interview with Carter, we'll have a couple of Patreon questions to get through, and we'll get you out of here. And before we get to the next part of the episode, I want to tell you about our friends over at Cincy Shirts, as if you need me to tell you about them. Let's be real. If you are in the market for a t-shirt, dare I say, a Cincinnati-themed t-shirt, why are you looking anywhere else other than Cincy Shirts? They've got the best stuff. They've got awesome Reds, Bengals, FC Cincinnati gear. They've got all sorts of gear for your whatever you got going on, okay? That's how big and broad it is. You've got an old-timey classic amusement park that is your favorite from the Cincinnati area, I bet you they got a t-shirt about it. Did one of your old favorite franchises fold, or maybe a franchise you never got to see play fold? I bet you they've got a t-shirt for them. It's a really cool selection. I got to tell you, in store is maybe the best way to go. They will print on site. You didn't hear it from me, but you can work out some special arrangements. Say you've got a design you really like, but you want it on the back of a shirt. I bet you could talk them into it. Okay. It's a good time. It's a really, really good shop. They're good people over there. You can find them in Loveland. You can find them in Oakley Hyde Park, and you can find them in Northern Kentucky. And they print online as well. They'll ship to you anywhere. Now, here's the best part. They sell gear for the Post. That's right. You want an Opie shirt? They've got that. You want a one of the 12 shirt? They got that. You want to let folks know how you feel about San Diego? Boy, there is a shirt to show people that, okay? Check them out, Cincy Shirts. When you're there, use the promo code ThePostCincy. All one word, all caps. They'll knock 10% off of the entire order. That works on Post gear as well. So please do not buy our stuff at full price, okay? Use the code, knock a couple bucks off for yourself. So thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, listener, for using the code. Oh, and joining us here in part two, a very special guest for us here at the Postcast. We are joined by FC Cincinnati's own Carter Chapley. Carter, how you doing this evening?
I'm great. I just got back from seeing Wicked for the second time.
Nice.
Got to celebrate Mrs. Chapley's birthday today, which was lovely. And her 3 things she wanted to do on her birthday were sleep in, go see Wicked again, and then go to bed promptly at 7:30. So I was like, this is perfect. This works out.
She very similar routine to Mrs. Chief, who considers it a bad Sunday if she's not in bed before 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. It worked out well. I was going to say it got bothered by earlier in the season when we played like Sunday games, and she was like, what do you mean there's games on Sunday? Like, no, that's not the deal we've made in this league.
Yeah, this is not what we signed up for. Okay. Come on, Tim Apple. Put us back on Saturday.
I got things to do on Monday. This is inconvenient for my life. It's starting to impact my life when we have these games like this.
Saturday nights are fun. This whole Sunday thing is no.
It is underappreciated how there's nothing worse than plans on a Sunday, because all you can think about the entire time is that creeping sense of I'm borrowing from tomorrow to have fun right now. And that's awful. Like, even if your Monday doesn't have anything going on, or even if it's like you can use some PTO on the Monday or whatever, Sunday plans, it's thieves of joy putting something on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Like Sunday night when you get back from whatever you're doing and you're like, oh my God, we didn't get anything done. All the laundry still needs, it's awful. It's the worst. That's why I just don't do it. I don't work on Mondays. No.
Life pro tip from Carter. Just don't show up for work on Monday. Just don't work on Monday.
Listen, if the team's not training on Monday, I find there's, you can find something to write from home. Sure.
Yeah.
I think Sunday night is kind of famously the equivalent of a weekend night for the FC.
I've heard
there's some cool spots downtown.
Some
you
have
can
said.
go check out.
Honorary members of industry and honorary members of industry night.
Exactly.
Oh God, Carter, I am so glad you were able to join us here, because this was a very odd season, and I would just love to get sort of your general thoughts and impressions on this season. It's something that we asked ourselves throughout the season, and I find myself going back to it more and more now, is given everything that happened, say, off the field and injury wise, I'm struggling to decide if this was a successful season or not. Great. I'm grading it on a curve. Obviously, I think our standard is always trophy equals successful season, no trophy equals unsuccessful season. I assume the coaching staff probably feels somewhere in that ballpark, but as a somewhat neutral observer in this space, how do you rate it?
it's kind of like when your like straight A student comes home with like a B,
Right.
And it's like, you know, since, you know, the Albright era, I guess we'll call it, because he was first, like you've had like your C student got a B plus and it was like, hell yeah. And then you had an A in their second year. And then it's like, okay, it's like a B plus, B, like whatever you want to call it. I think no one in the coaching staff would call it necessarily like exceeds expectations, but I think it would say that it was a successful season in such that like so much happened to derail it. And yet still, what is it, third in the East? You know, like I know these are all very, very much like consolation prizes, and I recognize that as much as anybody. But it's like only one team, I guess, not in MLS. There's more than one team that can win a trophy every year, but only one team wins MLS Cup. Only one team's like, so there's going to be 28 teams that if the bar is win a MLS Cup or bust, then 28, now 29 teams are going to be saying it's an unsuccessful season, and I just don't know how informative that is, like how if that's helpful. I'd certainly say that it could have gone better. Right, like it could have gone better, right? Like especially down the stretch. But I think we saw kind of the potential of this team, and moving forward, it's more about like, do you get that same potential or is it completely different? And I think that still remains to be seen in an exciting and interesting way.
So if you had to look back on the 2024 season that was, and you had to sort of sum up what the word of the year was, or what the storyline of the year was, what was the top line takeaway of the 2024 FC Cincinnati season for you?
It's the 42 lineups in 42 games for me. And I think I did a bad job. I think I maybe did a bad job of like telling the story throughout the season, because I found, when the dialogue started coming towards the end of the year about like Pat's just doing this to do this, I was like, that's my responsibility to like talk about why he's doing this. And maybe I didn't share it well enough to be like, Pat goes into every game trying to win that game. Like there is no version of like a, you know, midweek play the kids to get the Saturday game against your big opponent. Like what's the best lineup going into Wednesday? What's the lineup going into Saturday? And so when Pat's evaluating it, he's, you know, I'm sure he's aware there's been a lot of change, but I don't know at what point in the year he's like, we've been doing completely different all season. And so I could have better communicated that this year, but I think that's the thing, right? Because it kind of, it summarizes everything that's happened, right? It summarizes Aaron Bupenza's departure, Matt Miazga's injury, Nick Haglin's injury, the players coming in and out, you know, Teenage Adebe coming in late in the end of the season, right? Like making a name for himself, you know, with this group, Lucho's injury with his feet. You can kind of put everything into that box and say like, well, they played 42 lineups in 42 games and then found like a lineup that I don't know if that's their favorite lineup, but it's the one that was working in the playoffs. Right. And then they played it like 4 times in a row. But because it was like, it felt like it was working at the time. And I, you know, right. I don't know what I would have done differently in that moment, but it's what was working. And so like, I think that's the one where I sum it up is like the number of lineups. And I think I'm trying to remember if like at one point Pat said at the end of the season, like, I know at one point in that stretch, he's like, he, you know, looked back on it for a moment. It's like, maybe I should have found places to be more consistent, but like, you know, he moves Yuya back because he's the next best central midfielder. And he's like, I'm trying to win the game. That's my job. This is the team I have. So that's the one I look at as like the biggest top line story. And then you can kind of go down the ranks of everything that includes the transfer window happening the way it did.
Right.
You know, in and out now. Lucho's injury, Matt's injury. That feels like closer to the top of that pile of like what makes up that roster decisions. But like even to start the year, it was like you go down to Jamaica and Matt's playing in that game, but he's not playing in the home opener because he's still suspended. Like it just kind of all starts from there. And that's where the lineups kind of turn over from.
Yeah, people.
That's a good point.
It's been so long. People forget. Yeah, Matt Miazga started the season suspended, lingering from the infamous pizza incident. So I have another question then, building off that. So there were a lot of individual storylines, and the first one you mentioned, I wanted to sort of unpack a little bit, the transfer window in the summer. I'm just curious, are you allowed to say now how much you knew was potentially happening and sort of how much unused content was generated when certain deals didn't get across the finish line.
Yeah. Well, Tom kind of like in that story he wrote for GiveMeSport.com, kind of like highlighted how like the stadium was booked and the, you know, for the Berterame transfer that then never happened. And I've got a pretty big feature on piece of written work on Berterame that never happened, which then I got really fortunate because I converted it to a Nico piece, which I knew Nico from my very brief time in St. Louis. So I was like, okay, this is like, this actually for me and me alone worked out because like I can spin this. I don't need to do a whole ton of research. Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the that's the only one that even got close to me. Like hearing about it, like I learned about stuff from Tom's story, to be completely honest. Which, you know, that's whatever. But like that's the only one that got even remotely close to me. Where it was kind of like the whisper, like you kind of hear whispers, and you're like, maybe I should start preparing for something because. But it never actually got across the finish line. The closest I got informationally was like, you might want to be ready to do something on this day. And I was like, okay, I'll be ready.
So you don't get the call. It's like, we're playing Camargo. You want to join?
No, not like that. But yeah, like I think you guys broke the Cheeto one, if I remember correctly, or something to that effect. And that was me actually finding out about that. So like, shout out to you guys.
That was as deaf of a response to like news breaking I'd ever seen. I think we put out the tweet and then I don't think I didn't see like any acknowledgement of it for like a week.
Yep.
From I'm not talking about from the team. No, I'm talking about anything. From like anywhere.
Yeah, no.
I mean, Transfer Market once called us the mostly reliable the post Cincy.
Heck yeah.
I'll stick with that.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. But the summer transfer window as a storyline was kind of like challenging because you kind of see what's happening and you see how it's going to happen. And you're like, you know, like the content and comms department is distinctly, we work in the same building, but we're distinctly different from like what's happening a couple doors down. And so like I am also feeling the clock tick and go like, you know, I see there's a lot of commotion over there, but like that doesn't mean anything to me. Like that happens every day. We're at training every day. Things are going on. And so I'm also waiting for it. And then Nico comes in and I felt really bad for how the Nico experiment went here. Cause I think it could have gone very differently. And I think he's a really good person and a player and took a lot of the, he had high expectations for himself and just couldn't get it off the ground in a way that worked for what this team was doing and took that very hard. And I think that was very challenging for him towards the end of the year. And you know, that's the game, right? That's unfortunate, but that's the game. But it was a funny summer transfer window, that's for sure, which then turns into like, all that happens and we get Kevin. So it's great. It worked. It ended up working out. Okay.
Yeah. Denkey can't seem to stop scoring final goals for Cercle Bruges. It's
right.
Every game he's subbing in for his last appearance. Oh, that was the last home appearance. Oh, that was the last European appearance.
My man is on a Midwest goodbye tour where, you know, you say goodbye at the restaurant and then your cars are parked in the same direction. He just keeps like, all right, I guess we're still talking with Cercle Bruges here.
Well, what did they do when he was in Slovenia? Like he subs in and it's like, he's like subs in the 70th and 3 minutes later he's got a goal. And then by the end of it, he's got a goal and an assist. And it was like, oh, okay. So like, this is not like this was meant to be like, just kind of like throw you out there, say goodbye, get your last appearance in. Nope. Gets another goal.
No, he was, and he got the draw today for him. So like I mean, on one hand, I'm excited, right? Like, obviously, like, it's awesome that he's still trying, that he's got this big transfer coming, but he's still trying for his current team. He's clearly good at scoring goals. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, hey, man, save some for us. Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, he said he's got 30 to 35 on deck for us next year.
Hell yeah.
I mean, so if he only ends up with 30, yeah, it's be disappointing if he doesn't hit his 35 total. Then in that regard,
I mean, he set the expectations, not us.
Is that going to be like God, I can just see it already. It's going to be like March, and someone's going to have the Twitter account that's just like goals Kevin needs per game to reach 35. And it's just going to be like horribly unfair as the year goes on, as if it's like, oh yeah, 27 goals in MLS isn't enough. Like,
we'll just start him against Motagua. Get like 6 or 7 out of the way to start.
So I realized this all of a sudden after the draw was like, I'm sitting at home watching this draw, and I'm going like, the MLS record transfer reportedly is going to come in, fly into Cincinnati in like the middle of December. There's snow on the ground. I don't know if that's something a Togolese striker is totally familiar with. I'm sure he is, but and then he's going to get on a plane and go down to Clearwater, Florida for preseason. And then he's going to get on another plane and be like, this is the Champions League. Like, this is what we're like aiming for. And he's going to fly for his first game for the Orange and Blue is going to be in how do you pronounce it? Tegucigalpa? Is that how it's pronounced?
Tegucigalpa.
Tegucigalpa. Okay. So he's going to be down. That's his first game for the Orange and Blue. And he's going to look around and be like,
where did I sign?
Okay, cool. What's up with this?
Well, he's played in France and Belgium for years.
Yeah,
he's seen snow.
Yeah, no, that I'm less worried about. But like, I think it's just the whole I think the stretch of time will kind of be like, what the hell is going on?
What'll be the bigger culture shock, Honduras or Clearwater, Florida?
Clearwater. It's Clearwater. Clearwater.
Right from the Scientologist down to Central America. It's going to be a wild ride for Kevin.
You may have to warn him.
So all of the restaurants that you could possibly go to they're totally washed out from hurricanes. That's completely normal. Don't think anything of it.
Do you speak French, Carter?
Enough to put it together. Okay. But like if the like this had like I got asked once before, and we tried it for I believe it was Aaron Bupenza's press conference where we tried to do like I would do the translation like Mr. Horlander would do, and we were just like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do it like this. There's too much of a delay here. You're not sure, and I was like, so like I've had the casual conversations with Kenji and Bombadem is my I try and practice with. But it's definitely not well enough to be like, we're doing a full-fledged interview or anything like that.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
It's too bad.
Yeah,
but his English is really good. So that's, I did that interview with him and his English is great. And I'm like, that's all I need. Heck yeah.
Yeah. And he had a great interview with the Golazo Network, I want to say it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was really good to see. Carter, I want to ask a question that I'm going to try to frame it in the most positive way possible. Sergio Santos, are we getting a discount on Sergio Santos's vibes? Is he a $5 million vibes player?
Vibes player.
And we are only having to spend $1 million for his vibes?
So I've thought about this a lot, and I'm trying to find I think he's an important member of the locker room in terms of like keeping things together. Like that's an important part, especially connecting the guys who have a lot of MLS experience with the guys who come from South America, like whatever the lineup looks like, guys who aren't as familiar. He's an important resource for the team in terms of that. I think if you look at what he did this past season, he was a really important player for this team. That can mean a lot of different things. That's kind of like, you can kind of decide how you feel about that. But I think the way Pat used him clearly shows that they feel like his skill set is something that they felt was valuable, especially off the bench. And then at times when you needed him to start. And I think if you look at his production, he's probably, the full grasp of what he's best at. He's best coming like shot out of a cannon in the late games and kind of punishing tired center back course, right? Like that's what he's best at. And I don't know the league, like I'm trying to put together like every team. This is a project of mine, is like every team's salary structure for the year based on what's ever publicly available. Yeah. And I just don't know like what a like backup striker or first off the bench reserve striker after Chris gets up on stage at the press conference goes like, we want starters on our bench. This is what does that cost you?
Right.
I think if you consider like, if it's whatever the math is on that, I think Sergio fulfills that role. I thought you, Kevin, had one of the craziest takes I've ever heard on your last episode.
Still getting roasted for that, by the way.
Cut Stefan Schirilla if he's not ready to start, which is just like, okay, that's crazy. But
I disavow that take for the record. So.
It's absolutely insane.
It kind of felt like it listening to it this morning. But like,
if I may,
you may not. You may not.
My only point was, he has to be able to match the output of an aforementioned designated player, Nico Gioacchini. Okay. And that was 1 assist and no goals. And I'll tell you right now, Schirilla can give you no goals and 1 assist over the course of a year.
Was that your take initially?
That was not your take initially. No.
Your take
nonsense.
was that if he's not currently as good as Santos and Baird,
yes,
you should cut him.
Which I will say, their output not very good. I think he can match them.
I don't want to cut Schirilla. No. That's an insane take.
Which would then lead you to the conclusion of my opinion, which is I don't know that we need Santos or Baird. But okay, I apologize. But I'm going to continue to double down on a horrible take.
Those points don't connect for me.
Fair enough.
The stuff on Schirilla feels entirely out of nowhere.
Especially for like a dude that's like 16.
Whether Santos and Baird like serve commensurate, value with their salaries is an independent question that you don't have to pull Schirilla into.
Let me maybe move on from this.
My poor boy into.
Let me move on from this insane take that Kevin has. That just I don't even want to. I don't think it deserves any further 1s and 0s being recorded on it. So right now, the story of the offseason is the uncertain status of 2 players. I would say Lucho Acosta and Alvaro Barreal. How do you see that shaking out? Or what do you think is the path forward for this team with those 2 players right now?
Yeah. Alvaro, I take it at whatever Chris says, like it's unlikely, but anything's possible. Like, I think we can all kind of look around and be like, Alvaro's a great player and he did really well for this team. And it didn't go great for Cruzeiro, right? Like that wasn't like, it didn't go the way I think he imagined it if you asked him, but also like he probably, is there a spot if there's no salary cap in this league, basically, like, is there a spot for Alvaro Barreal on this team? Yeah, I'd love him. Like, that'd be great. But like, I take it, Chris is, more likely than not, he's not playing for this team. So, okay. Lucho, I really just have no read on. I just don't know. You can take that for whatever it means. Like, I just don't know what is going to happen with him. I think, from the moment he said it in the press conference right after the game against New York, it was kind of like, I took me completely by surprise. Like, I hadn't been familiar with that line of thinking from him. I don't think anybody in the room was.
Is there a moment when like you're in the press conference for that where you're like, should we cut the feed right now?
Well, yeah. I mean, we can talk about that a little later. But it was kind of like, when you're hearing it and you're kind of like, my first instinct, not to dismiss whatever John Horlander's doing as a dutiful translator, which is a very difficult position for him, especially with this specific instance, which is very challenging, was to be like, is something getting lost in translation? Like, am I not understanding something that's being told to me? And it's like continuing to ask Lucho. I think that's where you kind of saw like Pat and Laurel, me trying to like just make sure that like what he's saying is what he is like, this is directly what he's trying to talk about. So very surprising for me. I think how it shakes out is if he comes back, it means that he's happy to be here. Right. Like I just don't think there's a scenario. Like I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think if he comes back, it's because he's happy to be here. And if he's not, I think Chris and his team have kind of showed, and I think you guys pointed this out in a recent episode, which shows you how much I listen, but I think it was the last episode, Chris and his staff always have people they're recruiting, and whatever's next is like, maybe it's activated faster than you'd hope, but like there's probably some sort of a plan for what does life look like post Lucho. Personally, I hope he's back. That's my personal take. I hope he's happy. I really like Lucho. I really want him to be an MVP for this team because he has the capacity to, and it's way harder to go sign an MVP than it is to just have one. Yep. So I would really like that. If that's not the case, I think we've seen the leadership at FC Cincinnati be prepared to be agile for moments, right? Where like Matt Miazga goes down, you're never expecting that to happen in the way it did. And you bring in Chidozie, which then creates other problems down the road, but you cross those bridges when they come. But they were ready to they had an idea of what that would look like. So I don't know how this shakes out. I wish I did. I'd be a lot happier if I could sit at home. Like, even if I wasn't like reporting it, like I'd be a lot happier if I could just sit at home and be like building my little Lego sets in the off season, being like, we're going to be great again next year. Everything's going to be just okay. Like, but I just don't have like a really great read on what will or will not happen. I almost want to like emotionally hedge and be like, he's not coming back, so that when it happens, if it happens, I'm like not heartbroken.
Right.
But
it's also a good like spin as well, because you can be like, well, getting Lucho back is kind of like a new signing.
Oh yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, so they've already assumed he's gone. Yeah.
Right.
Not that you can speak for Lucho, but do you get any sense of what he's talking about when he mentioned players were let go before this season that he was upset by?
He said something like, what the club did hurt me a lot or something was the language that I don't think, to be frank, I don't think that made it into all the recaps of the interview. I think they just made it into some of the recaps of the interview. But
yeah. I can't make heads or tails out of it. Like, I don't know who he could be talking about.
I don't know if I can either from like a very realistic standpoint, but I know, like, you know, for example, him and Junior Moreno are very good friends, right? Like, and he moved on to something that was better for him and then came back to MLS. And, you know, this is professional sports where like Brandon moves on. Like, I'm not necessarily saying Brandon is the guy, but like Brandon wanted to leave for his own reasons. Alvaro wanted to leave for his own reasons. Santi Arias went down to Brazil for his own reasons, right? Guys have their own reasons for doing things. And sometimes those reasons are just things that you can't manage as a salary cap league club, right? Like that's just the way of life. Unfortunately, you get punished for being good in this league over a stretch of time, obviously. But like that's just the way of life. And so I don't necessarily understand it. That doesn't mean that like, I don't understand what he means by that. So like, I don't want to speak for Lucho in that sense, but like, I mean, yeah, it sucks to have your friends leave. Like, I get it. Like that, I don't like it when my coworkers that I really like move on to better companies, right? Like, or not better, but like better situations for them, right? Like we like here, you know, fine example. We had a very talented videographer go work for DC United this season because that's closer to where his family is. And it's like, I get it, but I still want to hang out with my buddy. Like,
right.
Like, I get it. But I can't, I don't know what that situation is about. And to be fair, like the club does a very good job of keeping these guys' personal lives personal to the best that they can. And I think that's something that's attractive to players. Like, I think when Miles Robinson signs here and he gets to have a little bit more of a quiet life than you would in other situations. I'm not saying every situation. That's appealing. I would like that. So, I can't speak for Lucho, and I don't know I don't know what that would be.
Does that impact, like, as a reporter and someone that's trying to tell these stories, how does that uncertainty, like, I would think it would be tremendously frustrating in a lot of these situations to not know that, because then it becomes hard to tell the story. And then, you know, fans like us, we fill in the blanks. And like, as someone who wants to fill the blanks in with accurate information, it's hard to, you can't just come out and write a story where it's like everything you've heard is wrong, but I don't know the right answer to what's going on. Like, that would be tremendously frustrating to me. I guess I don't even have a question for that. Just that would be an observation that it's tremendously frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, it can be frustrating to be like, but like, I'm also like, I think in sports journalism in particular, where, you know, like I've been lucky enough to work with like what I jokingly call like the hard, like real journos who like do, like I did court reporting for like 3 months and I was like, this is way too serious for me. Like, I want to tell my little stories and like talk about the league and like sports. Like, so like, I think that's a little harder for them, but I think and I'm not speaking for everyone, obviously. I don't want to speak for everyone on this on the Cincinnati beat. Is that we are also just as curious as fans, right? It's just that it becomes like we have more access to it, which then makes it more frustrating if you can't get those answers, because sometimes there's just answers you can't get, right? Like there's just things that I can't, like, even if I wasn't working for the club, like when I covered the Cardinals, like there were just times where it's just like that's just not something you're gonna get, and I have to kind of make peace with that and kind of fill in the gaps where I can, and that's not a fun answer. That's just like what it is, and unfortunately, and I don't know. I am also just as curious.
So on like I guess a twist on the same subject. So you had like the Kevin Denkey news. I forget the exact timeline of when like his name was first kind of associated with the team. I feel like it was a couple days before that last playoff game, and then stuff kind of moved. We started to see more public acknowledgement of it after. So I assume at some point in time you started getting ready, and you don't have to say when. You started getting ready to say like, "Oh, I'm going to have to like do an interview and story about this guy." Does your thinking about how you're going to talk to him change as Lucho Acosta's status becomes more up in the air? Because it seems like an obvious question, right? With a new DP striker, it'd be like, "Oh, have you watched Lucho? Are you excited to play with the league MVP?" And like, nobody can really say for sure if he's going to. Yeah.
At the time when I interviewed him, which was after Lucho had said what he said after NYCFC, was when I actually spoke to him. I asked him about, like, because he had been in Cincinnati, he'd seen the game, he'd been able to watch up close and see TQL Stadium, and I asked him, like, what do you make of the team on the field? And that's kind of how I tried to frame it. And he specifically mentions Lucho and Luca as the two guys. He's like, I can see like the quality, I can see the talent, but then he also mentions, I can see where I fit into this group, like how I can play and like why I fit what's going on here. But also I think a lot of these guys, playing with a really good player is obviously very exciting. I think a lot of these guys have an understanding that, like, no matter who I play with, my job is to do my job. And that, like, I can imagine it changes contextually for him, whether he gives me that answer or not. Is like, but he says, like, he can see the quality Lucho has. He can see, what kind of player Luca is, especially, and he saw him as a forward. So I don't know if at that moment, which I don't think we had learned from what Chris had said about playing further up the field about Luca. Like, I still think there is still some question about where he'll end up playing, but I think he can kind of see where he fits. It does make it harder to kind of after the fact, in my writing since, talk about like where the team is going forward. Cause it's like this player with a tremendous contract who fills a very important roster spot and changes everything you probably think, like the whole way you think of the roster, if he is here or is not here. Like where the roster is at, and he's under contract for 2 more years. So like I went in that interview specifically under the impression he would be back, just for the sake of like deciding how to operate. Like I have to decide how I'm going to do this. So that's how I did it. I have since in my writing, like, mentioned the question. But until he's not an FC Cincinnati player, he is. Right. So like that's a complicating factor to this. I'm excited for Kevin either way. Yeah. So, as I said earlier, I would personally really like Lucho back, but that's just me.
I mean, with Kevin too, there's almost a vibe to him, just watching what little I've been able to watch of his Cercle Bruges highlights and how he's played since the signing. He very much feels like if this was a basketball player, this is a go get buckets guy. And it doesn't matter who the other 4 guys are on the court, I'm going to go get buckets. And that's kind of the attitude you want your striker to have. And it's certainly something we haven't had on this team. Brandon Vasquez to a certain point, but Brenner was kind of like that. That was the role that he was supposed to play on this team. And to me, that's what makes Denkey so exciting compared to even the names that were being tossed around at the transfer window. Is there's some good players that we were looking at. But this is like, there isn't a guy that's like just a prolific goal scorer with that kind of, when he says 30 to 35 goals, you laugh, but then it's also, Man scores every time he hits the field.
Seems to be. And then the goal, what was it in Conference League this week, where he's the one who brings the ball up the field for the most part?
Yeah.
Is kind of like, it's kind of like, oh, you can kind of see how that fits with what this group could do. Like you can see how that whole thing comes together, or how he can do it in a different way than just be the kind of poacher, like target forward. Like he can fit all those different kinds of roles. But yeah, I mean, I think he's the kind of guy who, if you heard like, oh, San Jose, just for example, because they have a new head coach, like is bringing in their big target 9, and he's going to be the guy who they define. Yeah, well, there's no like family connection there that might say there might be some trust built between, no, but like, whoever, like, let's whatever, like say or pick another team, San Diego, with it doesn't matter, right? Just any team. Right. You're like, oh, you can see how you build a roster around what this guy does. Right. We just happen to be doing it with a bunch of other very good players, which is even more exciting. That's even better.
Yeah, there had to be no better sales pitch than to go to that NYCFC game where you see on the field a very good team with a black hole at the striker position, and you just think, just put me in, coach. Like we could run this whole damn tournament. And yeah, if I'm Denkey, I'm looking at this team thinking, yeah, I absolutely see myself in what they're building here, because honestly, 2024, the story of that season is we don't have a guy like him up top. And I think if you were to plug in a Brandon Vasquez again or something like that, I think it's a wildly different season we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
We go through that. We get the excitement with Denkey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much were you looking forward to the half-day trade window? And then also, how surprised were you that we were actually the biggest newsmakers of the half-day trade window?
I was surprised, and I can give the context to that just momentarily. But I think we all can kind of look at where the roster was, where we had a group, and I kind of had the sense, like probably the trade window was Monday, like over the weekend, basically being like, it kind of feels like there's something that could shake out here, right? Like there's just a lot of moving parts here. There's just too much happening with where the roster is. Like things aren't lining up. There's an expansion draft later in the week, and you kind of start putting your 12 names down, and you're like, I'd really like to not lose anyone for 50K GAM.
Right.
So you kind of start to sense. And then I first caught wind of the trade happening technically the night before, but I had gone to bed extraordinarily early because I had a personal appointment early the next morning. And so I was like, I'm going to get to bed and like be really responsible, and I'll get up in the morning and I'll go to work and we'll get this all taken care of. And then I wake up and there's a text about the trade, and the trade is like now underway. So, so I was like very surprised. I was genuinely very surprised. But like, I think given where the roster was at, I think the thing that surprised me most about the trade to Colorado was that it was both, not that there was a trade with 2 defenders. It was maybe who the defenders were, and that it was a single trade. Like that was the thing that kind of surprised me most. I thought Ian Murphy and Chidozie Oziem were like extremely talented players in a group of extremely talented center backs. And unfortunately, again, I've said salary cap way too many times in this, but like, that's just so defining of what the offseason is that like, you just can't, I don't know if you can build a roster like that. And I think Chris even acknowledged it, like we haven't done it the way other successful teams have done it. Which kind of points you to think like maybe there's change coming. But I thought both of those guys would individually, like teams would want at them, and you could probably break them up but I trust Chris that this was the deal that was available, and this is the deal that made the most sense. And so like whether I was surprised or not is relevant, but I was surprised that I think Colorado was the team with a half-day trade window and acquiring, what was it, every one of Philly's draft picks for 3 years.
That's right.
And then going out and getting Ian and Cheeto. But I think I would have been really disappointed if I think when you see who San Diego then took a couple of days later, and if you look at our roster, it's like, okay, so if Ian or Cheeto is unprotected, they're getting taken.
Right.
They're too big of an asset. So particularly Ian was what I saw with how young San Diego went in the expansion draft.
I mean, it seems like San Diego just went like young and cheap. Like they took a guy from Orlando who had like no minutes.
Yeah. Well, then you compare that to Ian Murphy, who's got 100, who's young, cheaper than others, though he's got a contract extension, a new contract that kicks in this year, who's got 100 plus appearances. Like that's not a bad guy to have as a left center back or a left back. Like, so I can kind of see how it happens. And then Cheeto, you look around the center back room and you go, is Cheeto a better center defender in the 3-man, which we've now learned is probably how they're going to approach it again. Better than Matt? No. Do I like Cheeto or Matt or Miles on the right of that threesome? I like Miles better. And I think, then he's not left-footed. And I think we've seen that Pat clearly prefers to have a left-footed center back in that left center back role. Left center back, left-footed center. You get what I'm saying? And so you can kind of build your way to the logic of like, it kind of seems like Cheeto was the odd man out when that's the most valuable asset.
Right. And the other thing too that we talked about was you're not just worried about San Diego making an expansion draft pick. You could see an unprotected Cheeto or an unprotected Ian being incredibly valuable to any number of teams who then would make the call to San Diego and say, hey, make this pickup and we'll get you the young player that you're looking for elsewhere. We'll get you the money to do something elsewhere for that because we covet this player as well.
Well, then you see, because that literally happens for St. Louis, where like they're like left holding this, like, I guess holding, pennies when they could have traded Jose on Monday to DC for probably only like you could have even cut a deal somewhere in the middle and been happy.
Right.
They didn't move. And so they left disappointed, and I prefer not to be disappointed.
Right. And so part of all this was I'll say it for you again, salary cap, and the realities of the salary cap. How much more difficult is it to tell this story because of how opaque the MLS is about salary and how we're all kind of just like we hear Chris say, we have some cap issues, and we hear other people that are reporters saying we have cap issues, but in virtually every other sport, you can go and you can do the math yourself and see exactly how much cap space your team has or what cap difficulties your team has. And in MLS, it's kind of like, we know that this team probably needs more GAM. We know that there was probably an anticipation that while they were planning that Barrial's sale to Cruzeiro would go through and give them a GAM conversion, that $3 million. But the fact that these numbers aren't published and aren't public means that it's really hard to know just how bad the problem is, how much these deals made the problem better. Like right now, as we sit here, it's hard for us to even know, does there have to be more movement in order to generate more GAM? Well, does the team have moved to space to make additions? Like that has to be frustrating for you as well, trying to tell this story to the fan base and say, no, it's not that we don't like Ian and Cheeto. It's that there are just some hard realities about how business works in this league.
It's very hard because every once in a while I have to like take a step back and remember who my like target audience is versus who my most engaged audience is. Like I am constantly trying to make the tent bigger and bring people who may not be as diehard about FC Cincinnati feel like they're part of the tent, which is a bigger goal. But like the people I'm engaging with most are people like you guys, who are the ones who are on social media who are locked in on this. And so I don't need to explain. I have to explain parts of this, but like I don't have to explain that the salary cap is complicated at every turn. The hard part is like explaining it in a way that isn't just word salad, like meaningless like definitions is like, this is what this does. And like, this is why this is important. Trading for $1 million GAM means this. It means it's not necessarily cash, because then like on the other side of this is like, I'm not sure. And I during the expansion draft, you have a head coach in this league get up on the draft table and say like, we're trading this player for $400K cash. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, that's not what's happening. And that's not a helpful, like, that's like that. I know like there was just a report that all of a sudden, like there might be open transfers and not trades in MLS, but like that's not here yet. And you're trading him for allocation money. I know you, Mikey Vargas, know what you're talking about, but like the people who are watching this for the first time may not understand that. And I have to like constantly be like, no, it's not cash. We didn't like, but we transferred Brandon for cash that we could then convert into fake money that is actually not even fake money. It's just like a higher salary cap number. Like you can just add it to the top. So like it's very difficult, but it is it is something that I try to undertake pretty frequently, is to like, here's the mechanism. Here's why it's important. Here's what they're doing. And then the fallback for me is like, and I have it easier than other writers in this league because I can very handily just kind of be like, I don't write this literally, but like the gist of it is like, Chris is very good at this. He's one of the best in MLS at managing the cap specifically.
Right.
And that's evidenced by like the manipulation of things over time, right? Like we have a lot of evidence to suggest that he's very good at finding the spots.
We have some MLS rule changes that suggest he's very good at finding the spots.
So like it's an easier thing to be able to go out into a piece of writing or into the world and be like, no, you should trust Chris because there's this body of work that suggests that like, is any team perfect? No, but this team is better than most at manipulating probably the most important thing off the soccer field this league has. And so that makes it a little bit easier, but that is the complicated factor of all this, is that, you know, salary cap numbers, the salary budget charge, GAM, TAM, allocation for success, allocation for expansion, allocation for making the CONCACAF Champions Cup are not strictly defined. So like I can put together a spreadsheet with all of our rosters and all of our trades and like perfectly understand the rules, and we're still not getting all the information. Right. Like you can, so like my preference is to kind of be like, it's close or it's not close, and you can kind of vibe from there. Like, so that's kind of what I go for. But there's always going to be some rule you've never heard of that's activated that you're like, well, okay, I guess we're allowed to do that now. And you only find out after it's happened. So you can't predict. It's not a predictive league in that sense.
Yeah, it's like the 5 million GAM bonus that you get for making the Club World Cup. That I'm sure they're not telling us about right now.
Yeah. That's why Seattle can trade
extra
for
DP.
That's why Seattle can trade for all those guys, right? That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seattle, that's what we're talking about.
So suddenly Seattle's linked to every decent player out of Dallas. So that's good.
Well, we found out that apparently that you can now trade budget charge.
Portions of budget charge. Yeah, that blew my mind. I was like, hold on. When did that become an option? Because in the NHL, you can do that. In the NHL, that's a thing you can trade for, like cap retained. And it was like, wait, hold on. If that's an option, it's like, do you think I almost wondered if Tom tweeted that and like someone, Chris, Kyle, Hunter, like whoever in the front office all of a sudden was like, we can do that? Like all of a sudden, oh my God.
They fly now?
I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I'm not sure I've ever seen that reported before, but it's like as I recall, kind of the explanation for the weird number for the DeAndre Yedlin trade last year is we were sending GAM back to like knock him off of Miami's budget. And you hear I mean, you hear it's usually done like GAM being used as like a mechanism to like
because TAM is instantly applied at the beginning of the season because the contract is, oh, here we go.
Let's do it. Let's do
it. Is because the salary budget charge is calculated over the course of every day of the season. It's like the prorated number per day, and you just have to reach the compliant number, and you have to kind of like, I think it's that you have to target it. And if I'm saying this, that means there's probably at least like 10% of this wrong. So like, let's just but so like TAM is applied at the very beginning so that the players like never reaches it. But GAM can be applied like retroactively or counter to like current moment. So if a player has their TAM applied at the beginning of the season and they're traded, you can't recover that unless you trade back Like that player's salary budget charge will always be that number, that tammed down number.
Is this like a Tenet situation where GAM is traveling backwards in time and TAM is traveling forwards in time?
Exactly. And fire becomes cold because it's going backwards.
All I know is you need to bring an oxygen bottle with you.
And somewhere in the middle, an MLS game happens.
Where would you fall into the idea I had last year that there should be a high stakes poker game that is televised on like Fox Sports 1 before the season, and each general manager can come and stake themselves with 150,000 in GAM, and it's winner take all, Texas Hold'em style?
You see, I think we should be doing it like the Poker Stars cash games that happen throughout the year. Like you can keep doing this, and you can kind of opt in at the very beginning of the season to play the big hands, or like maybe it's like right around the secondary transfer window, and you guys just need an extra 30K GAM. You sit at the table and you try and get a little bit more. Like it's like we need it.
We need Lashif to host a high stakes game in Morocco because we're a little short on the cap this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Or let teams bet. Like, you know how they have mayor's bets ahead of the Super Bowl? Like, teams can bet some GAM on the outcome of the game. Like, you feeling frisky?
On the Super Bowl, yeah.
Or no, on any game. Yeah, we'll just make it for anything. Like
that would do counter the league's anti-gambling policy. We know this. We know this.
I know the league is against fun.
Gambling on soccer is not allowed.
Yeah.
Except unless you do it in the sports book that they're putting in the stadium.
I don't know anything about that. Nothing to do with me.
Carter, on a more personal note, the last time any of the 12 heard from you, it was on our lovely, sappy Thanksgiving episode. You were on your way to the family Thanksgiving where you were going to have to explain the roster rules to the in-laws. How did it go this year?
We're getting better. Like we're getting progressively better. We understand the concept of a designated player now, which is like that's progress. But now my wife understands GAM. Like she can now communicate back to me in like allocation money. And that's a huge step in the right direction, I think.
In a direction.
Right. But then like the real trip up was not understanding supplemental roster. Because I got the text after Chris's press conference when he says that they're trying to get Emil on a supplemental roster, and Megan texts me, my wife texts me and says, "So like, was he not on the team? Was he like a second team player who got called up?" And I was like, "No, but he did play a second team game." But that's not related. So that's what
I love about MLS roster is that there's always a layer deeper to go. Mm-hmm. Just when you think you've got it figured out, or like my wife is the same way, where it's like she's got this figured out. And it's like, no. Like you're only scratching the surface of the sicko mode that is understanding MLS roster rules.
Yes, there's more. There's always more here.
An analogy you could use is you just say,
oh God,
man, I'm sorry you cut that, Kevin. That was really funny, and it would have been fun to share with all the listeners right there.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah.
Can't believe Grayson said that.
I mean, I guess in some ways it's like the 40-man roster in baseball versus the 25-man roster. That may be the closest you'll get to it in another sport, or the practice squad versus the, I don't know.
Or on the day of a doubleheader, you're allowed to have 27 guys on the baseball roster. Like it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And then occasionally that guy gets traded to the other team during the middle of between the two halves of the doubleheader. Classic. So Carter, what are you looking forward to in the 2025 FC Cincinnati season? What are you looking forward to covering? What do you think the big storylines are going to be? We've got our first game scheduled. That's really exciting.
Yes, we do.
Tell us what we're looking forward to in 2025 in your take.
I'm looking forward to a lot. We talked about Kevin a lot, and Kevin is Kevin Denkey is like objectively one of the most exciting players to come to MLS in a little while. One, I didn't say the most, I said one of, because Luke Orejano came last year, and that's also big. Mm-hmm. So that's like a big top of the line. Like Kevin Denkey is going to be a massive reason to watch this team next year. I mean, this is a team which, even as constructed, if you know, let's say everything goes like not wrong this offseason, but like, let's say Lucho doesn't come back, is still a team that's going to be very competitive for every trophy that the league has to offer. Like, frankly, I know like the Supporters Shield is like a full season length one, but I think we saw this year that like even a team that was not at their best for a lot of different reasons was right there in it until just about the very end. Obviously that part of it is just as important. That's why it's a regular season trophy, right? Like the first game of the season is as important as the last game of the season to winning. Well, you're not literally the last, but you know what I mean? Like it goes throughout the entire year. It's about consistency. And so this is a team that will do that again. It's also a team that's going to have a lot less interruption to that, right? We're not looking at a year where Miles Robinson is all of a sudden going to be gone for 3 months and you just kind of have to deal with it. He might be gone. He might be gone at times. So might Teenage Debe and Kevin Denkey and like lots of different people, but they're not going to be gone for like 3 months where you have to like figure it out. It's going to be a little more manageable, I think. And it's a team who gets another year better. You get another year of Pavel Buka under his belt, like here in his second year. Like what's the Goss theory? I think is the one that is attributed pretty often. Is new players to the league are always better their second year. Now apply that to Pavel, to Luka, to like you can kind of go up and down the line. That's exciting. Like it's going to be an extremely competitive team and a team that I think you feel good about. There's lots of work to be done, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, someone's got to play left back or striker, depending on, or left wing back or striker. Like there's got to be work to be done, but we're getting there, and it's going to be an exciting team regardless. So I'm very excited for next season. I can't imagine the amount of disruption that this season had happening again. If it does, I think you kind of like chalk it up to the game and like you have to rethink how you approach seasons. But like, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Related question on the roster. We've had 2 consecutive seasons. In the 2023 season, it was Yerson Mosquera. In the 2024 season, it was Luca Orishano. Do you think Chris Albright has another, we have this player on loan and we're magically only paying him $80,000 or $100,000. Does he have another one in his bag to make it 3 straight years?
I mean, I don't know, but like he's shown that he can do it consistently. he keeps doing it. So like, yeah, I mean, like that's actually a very funny way to build the roster, and like churn it in terms of like getting the most out of your game, getting the most out of your out of the salary budget charge that you have, is to like bring guys in, and if they work, they stay. If they don't, then they don't have to be like committed. That's obviously not the prefer. I think most players probably don't prefer that, though some might like the idea of getting away. Or for like in Yerson's case, coming here and playing a full season, and then before his injury in England, like played his way into a Premier League team. If I am another really quality U22 player like Yerson was at the time, who's looking for minutes on their, to get better and play and then eventually play in their Premier League team, I can't think of a better team who might give you that opportunity. So it's an appealing option, but yeah, I mean, maybe I just don't know like what's in the bag of tricks. I'm waiting the same as you guys are. Like, I don't know. But I'm confident. So I always joke at the end of every season, like there's the bingo card that you want to fill out. And like sometime this off season, we're going to find out that like Real Salt Lake is signing a winger that like somehow we had the priority to, and like that's worth like $60K GAM or something. Like that's on the bingo card. So like I just don't know, and I'm excited to see like what's gonna come. Yeah, I mean I hope he keeps doing it, so I hope.
That is always my favorite version of the MLS news story, is finding out we've been squatting on some guy that nobody's ever heard of's rights, because we knew somebody in MLS would eventually be in for him.
The magnum opus of that move was getting money for Georgi Mihailovic.
Yes.
Or who was the
player
one in
who
LA?
left MLS never played for us when he played in MLS, and then went to a different MLS team. He was a homegrown for another team, and somehow we ended up getting paid for it. It was incredible.
It was
Atusta? Was he for LAFC? There was another one where he was on LAFC, left LAFC, and then came back to LAFC. But then, like, I gotta find what this was. I reported it, so I should know.
It sounds like it would have been a Tuesta.
Yeah.
It's just rent-seeking behavior from Chris Albright. It got the allocation order removed. It's the most glorious thing.
Was it Carlos Guerrezo?
Atuesta, yeah. Yeah, okay. I'm going back to when I'm told as part of this transaction, FC Cincinnati will receive $50K in GAM for Atuesta's discovery priority.
There we go.
Yeah, found it. Signs midfielder on loan from Palmeiras. So,
oh my God, I mean, that's how you get. You cobble a couple of those together, you get a Yamil Assad on your team, and all of a sudden there's a starter for nothing. I love it. Oh no, Carter, you've been so incredibly generous with your time. I can't imagine there is a human being listening to this podcast that doesn't know who you are or where your stuff is. But what would you like to hawk to the 12?
I'm on Twitter, currently known as X. It's not former, it's Twitter. At Carter Chapley. I'm on Blue Sky at Carter Chapley. That's more for the fun. And I have a deal out there. I've tweeted this, is that, like, when my Blue Sky following exceeds the Twitter following, I will talk about FC Cincinnati in detail on Blue Sky. Until then, it's just basically my secondary letterbox account where I just talk about everything else going on.
Love that.
So Blue Sky's the fun for me right now, and then work is on Twitter. I'm on fccincinnati.com as always. You can find my stuff there. I'll be hanging around, waiting for moves this off season, and then we'll be kicking off another really good preseason bit of coverage. We'll be going down to Clearwater for the entire month with the team, and then off traveling again. But we'll be in Clearwater. I don't know when yet, but we'll find out eventually.
A couple of days, it feels like.
Well, we'll find out. I think usually the big distinction is, like, when the Champions Cup game is, and that kind of, like, changes the way you approach the season. But we'll be down there doing coverage. I'll be doing live blogs. I'll be doing stories. So it'll be fun. So you can find me. That'll be all on fccincinnati.com.
Awesome.
And
well, cool.
And final question before you go: Leafs in first place. How are we feeling?
Not good. Not good. They're not good on the power play, which is, like, just unbelievable. They're way too talented. Their goalie situation feels very tenuous. Like, they're riding heaters right now. They're playing a better style hockey. Like, they're playing more physical, which is kind of something I wanted of this team from the last couple of playoff seasons. But, like, they're just not scoring. And, like, teams that don't score in the regular season. Nope. Oh God, teams that don't score a ton in the regular season in hockey, don't score in the playoff. Like, they don't just turn it on in the playoffs. Over 7-game series is like that. So I don't feel great about where the Leafs are at right now. But it's certainly better than the Raptors or the Blue Jays. So, like,
right.
That's all off in a different direction.
Could be worse.
Right. I still have no idea what the Washington Capitals are doing or how it's sustainable. So I'm just enjoying the ride right now.
Hey, that's fine. That's fun.
Oh God. Well, thank you so much, Carter.
Of course. I'm happy to be here as always.
All right, we are back. And again, a huge thank you to Carter for coming on and answering so many of our questions that barely make sense. I appreciate you, Carter, for doing that.
Yeah. You know, we didn't ask him.
What was that?
We didn't ask him. So how much GAM did we get for trading away absolutely nothing of value with the Kevin Kelsey? Trading the rights of Kevin Kelsey away.
Apparently none yet.
Stay tuned.
So we trade away the right of first refusal to sign with an MLS team. And if he signs, we will then get some amount of money.
That is a question that we should have asked him. Was, okay, so they don't get anything unless Portland signs him. But if Portland doesn't sign him, do we get that right of first refusal back? Or does Portland then get to go trade it to somebody and then Portland gets the money? Because I think that doesn't seem like a good deal.
Or they get a percentage and we get a slightly smaller percentage.
Right.
It's like a diminishing, like eventually it's going to be $5 GAM. Like, it's
right.
like absolutely no value.
Portland's going to arbitrage our right of first refusal on Kevin Kelsey. And then Ned Grabavoy is going to be the head deal maker in MLS, not your boy Chris.
It's just the dumbest league.
If they don't sign him, does it come back to us? Could we?
That's what I wanted to. I forgot to ask that, but I feel like it has to.
Well, I mean, somebody always has to. It's like learning about real property as a first year. Someone always has to have the rights. Like the rights just can't not exist.
You know what? This touches on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So I am a massive Marx Brothers fan. I love so many of their movies. I love their comedy. I think it is so supremely underrated. Now, this is where it gets weird. Nobody's entirely clear who owns the rights to their movies, which is why they are almost never produced, and they're not available on a single streaming service, despite the fact that most of them should probably be in the public domain right now. Nobody knows who owns them, and everybody's terrified of like sticking their neck out and making a DVD or something because they don't know who they're going to get sued by.
It's the ultimate joke, actually. Like, that's fantastic.
So damn, it's so good though.
It's like that one Wu-Tang album that Martin Shkreli bought.
Yes,
it's like, it's funnier that no one has heard it.
Yes. It probably sucks, let's be honest. There's no way they were trying that hard.
First off, how dare you? These are legends.
Oh God. Well, to wrap us up here in part 3, we do have a couple of Patreon questions to get to. This is where I promote the Patreon, but it's the holidays, so don't bother with the Patreon. Go buy a gift for someone you love or even just somebody you like. Instead, it is only $2 though, so it's not putting out that much. But if you do pay for it, as these people did, they do get to ask a question that is read on the air. And that's what we're doing right now. So I'm going to ask this one here from Soccer Account, which is a great name. Looking at the current roster and financials I've seen reported, and assuming not much changes there, do we have the quality depth outside of the starting 11 needed to be competitive across multiple competitions this season? Understanding it's very early days yet, but I'm concerned we're thinner this season than even last season.
I don't think it's legal to ask this question. When you think about depth, we have 10 starters for 11 slots.
Yeah. You got to keep in mind, Lucho desperately wants out. Assad and Hagelin are not officially on this team. It's
early.
starting.
It's early.
Yeah.
This time a year ago, Pavel Buka, Luka Orishano, Yamil Assad, any number of players that were big time contributors to FC Cincinnati last year were not part of the roster. And
Aaron Bupenza was on the roster.
Right. So it's early. Yes, this team right now needs more depth. It needs additional starting players. Give it time. It's too early to be panicking considering the window doesn't open for another 2 weeks. And
yeah.
I think everybody, if we all know what the problem is, I guarantee you Chris Albright knows what the problem is.
Yeah. I also think in general, we're probably a hint deeper than you might suspect. So like goalkeeper, we're settled. That's fine. Center back, you assume Nick Hagelin comes back and you assume maybe there's some movement there, but they've got some good center backs. You understand that Yedlin and Powell can deputize there as well. For the time being, Alvaro Barreal is on this roster. Potentially as your left wing back. You would have Brett Halsey under contract, so you're about as deep at wing back as you were this year. you may get Assad back. And then at striker, I mean, it's nobody's first choice, but Yuya Kubo, Kevin Denkey, Luca Orishano, Sergio Santos, Corey Baird. It's deep. It may not be as good as you want it to be, but it's pretty goddamn deep. Just sort of leaves what's going on with Lucho and maybe getting another midfielder in.
Yeah. You got kids on the academy pushing for minutes too. So
yeah.
I think Pavel might die. He played like 3 more games than anybody else on the roster last year by minutes, and runs the most every game.
Well, what if he likes it?
He might like it.
Wobodo is going to start showing more signs of wear and tear. He's not getting any younger. He had the injury at the end of 2023. He had the injury concerns this year. Yeah, you want to see.
It's early.
Yes.
And plus, whatever problems you think there are with the roster, there's at least something going on that you have no idea.
They're in the process of packaging Yuya Kubo and Roman Celentano to San Jose Earthquakes.
We'll get there. It'll be all right. And like we talked about with Carter, Chris has some nonsense bullshit. We're getting this guy on loan for $50 deal that he's working on right now.
And hopefully that person is Brandon Vasquez. And then that would be very fun. Just keep going back to the same old well. Let's shake this up a little bit. Justin Keller asks, maybe there's relation to Kip Keller. That'd be very funny. Would an NWSL franchise in Cincy impact your opinion on a winter MLS schedule? Field condition issues and overlapping match concerns related to having 2 teams would partially go away. That's an aspect I hadn't thought about with this.
No.
Chief, you're big NWSL guy and anti-winter schedule. Yeah. Does this sway you at all?
I don't want to go to matches when it's cold. I'm very, very clear on that. Being cold is miserable. I don't want to go when it's cold. So no, I don't want to move to a winter schedule. I don't want to ever move to a winter schedule. I like the summer. The field thing too is the field was bad.
Yeah.
There's an easy solution to that. Don't have concerts. Don't have dumb concerts at like the hottest part of the year. Don't do that. Don't have to replace your turf as most grass around the community is dying. Don't do that when it's not raining. So you avoid that. I don't think an extra couple of games of soccer are what did the turf in this year. It was the dumb concert they held.
That was, remind me, that was Kenny Chesney.
Yes. I wanted to say Uncle Cracker, but I knew that was wrong.
It's not Uncle Cracker. So
they're all the same person.
Is Kenny Chesney No Shoe Nation?
I don't know. It's
he
not
thinks your
wheelhouse.
tractor's sexy. I know that.
Oh, is that? It's not worth it.
Yeah, that wasn't worth it. The Who, especially in the context of Cincinnati, totally would have made sense. And they did that, and the field was generally fine. I know some people got mad about like the one goalkeeper box or whatever, but the field was fine.
Just don't do it. We don't need, like, that was the best argument to move to a winter schedule, was that you could use the summertime to just host concerts and make extra money. But like, I don't want to be cold. I don't want to be cold. Okay. I just don't want to go to games and be cold. I'm very, very simple on that. I would rather cool down on a hot night with a cold beer than be trying to ask someone to brew me a cup of coffee so that I can warm back up.
Somebody buy Chief a coat.
And for that matter, I want to send a special message out to all of the members of the incoming presidential administration who I know that are listening to this. If you abolish daylight savings time, there will be violence. For the FBI listening, I'm joking about the violence, but for the love of God, do not do away with daylight savings time.
I honestly think he's just confused.
That's 99% accurate.
I think they want to go to permanent daylight savings time.
Yeah,
which
it's
is fine.
abolished standard time, right?
Which
Right,
is good.
but I know he keeps saying abolish daylight savings time. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
He
it's
knows
abolished
vaguely
the
that
moving.
it's something that is the thing, right? But yeah,
there
Chief,
are-
unless I'm wrong, in which
No,
case,
but, I mean,
like,
there are accounts
Jesus.
online that I've been blocked by that are like all pro. They're all pro standard time weirdos, and they cite to sleep studies and other nonsense pseudoscience crap.
blinds. Get
Yeah.
blinds.
Yeah.
Yes, we've invented drapes many years ago.
It's like, people like sunlight in the morning. Who? You know who likes sunlight in the morning? The worst person you work with. That's
Get
chipper in the
up
morning.
later.
yeah, just
It is
sleep
easier
in.
for you to get up later than for me to get up earlier. Also, even if I get up earlier, that doesn't change the fact that I'm going to be working until, a certain
Right.
time. And then, I didn't see the sun today.
Yeah,
Right.
Wonderful.
right. And congratulations, the sun is up in the morning. It's like, well, that's great. You know what is open in the morning? Nothing. They close Frisch's. Frisch's isn't even open in the morning. Like, there's no errands you can run in the morning. There's no business you can take care of in the morning. So great. You will waste hours of sunlight drinking coffee, looking out the window, wishing it won't be dark when you get off work.
Yeah. Chief, would you accept a half-hour middle position?
All right. So I don't understand now. So look, nobody has a clock anymore. When it says turn your clocks back, nobody
Right.
has that anymore. Your time's
Right.
on your phone. It's automatically done. I think that they should have rolling daylight savings time where they increase that you change your clocks a minute a day over the course of 60 days so that there isn't this sort of sudden 1 hour change or whatever it is.
That's really funny.
And you can do that now because you just adjust your phone. Your phone just adjusts each day.
Yeah.
We don't need to have different times.
Thank you. UTC, baby. Or UCT.
Yeah.
Universal
No,
Coordinated
UTC.
Time.
Oh, I thought
Or
it was-
maybe it's in French, and so it's UTC, but I don't know. Yeah. Whatever
Zulu
it is.
time or whatever they call it.
There's a universal time we can all use, and then you just know that the shops in your town are open from 7 to 14 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I'm into that.
Come on.
Also, can we have
yeah.
metric time where everything's divided by 10s instead of 60s and 24s? Why isn't that a thing? Why is
No, but
metric
it's
time not a thing?
because it's because it takes the Earth 24 hours to rotate.
Okay, but why? No.
Why can't
broke
it
my
just take
brain
10
there for a
hours?
second.
And the hours are 1/10
That
of a
hurt
day.
my head. You just said for a second. How dare you?
Actually, you know what I was really impressed by and totally in on is the Kodak company's corporate calendar. You got to look this up. I don't know that they still do this, but for 100 years, the Kodak company ran on a 13-month schedule. So it was 4 weeks of 7 days a week. Every single month was even. And then on leap years, they just added one extra leap day that sat right in the middle of 2 perfectly even years. So it's 13
All right,
months.
so the International Fixed Calendar, also known as the Cotsworth Plan or the Cotsworth Calendar, the Eastman Plan, was proposed reform of the Gregorian calendar, first presented in 1902. The International Fixed Calendar divides the year into 13 months of 28 days each.
Yes.
Though it was never officially adopted at the country level, entrepreneur George Eastman instituted its use at the Eastman Kodak Company in 1928, where it was used till 1989.
Woo!
Man, you signed on to work at a company and all of a sudden, I don't even have a calendar that works anymore.
Yeah. How's December treating you? What's December?
Oh, it's the 10th month.
Well, yeah, because it's December. Yeah, and October is the 8th. Is the 8th month, obviously.
November the 9th.
Sept the
Sept the 7th.
7th.
Yeah. Easy.
And then Julius Caesar. Yeah. Obviously. That's how we all count.
Will be Augustus.
right.
Julius.
Julius Augustus. Yes. So there you go, Chief. There's a new one. There's if you're into time, there you go. That's a new rabbit hole to fall down.
What do they call the extra month?
If I remember correctly, they had named them after like famous philosophers or religious leaders, but then it was just like today's day it would be very not woke. It was like just 13 old white guys, but there was like Moses and Darwin, and it was an interesting.
I need to learn
Aristotle.
more about this. I may start like using this in my own schedule in my own life and just really confuse people when I'm setting up meetings.
It reminds me back when I was a vegetarian, a friend of mine was sick of like people having to figure out meals around my schedule or like my dietary restrictions. And I was not picky or mean about it, but he just felt like it was something that I did to inconvenience others, and he wanted to become nocturnal just for the sake of ruining everybody else's ability to schedule things.
The calendar year has 13 months with 28 days each, divided into exactly 4 weeks. It's 364. An extra day added as a holiday at the end of the year, sometimes called Year Day, does not belong to any week and brings the total to 365 days.
Yeah, and then every 4 years you get 2 of those.
Yeah. I love this. Just like there's just Year Day, and it's just, what month is Year Day? Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
You don't work on it. Nobody works on Year Day, so who cares?
Yeah, Year Day, we shut everything down.
Oh, it should be Year Day. It should be your day. Or it's just your day. You just do whatever you want on this day. All crime is legal.
Wait,
what?
That's the purge day.
See?
And then every 4 years, it's 2 days long.
2-day purge. Good luck.
Oh, God. Okay, I got one last question for us, and this is a good one to end on. Jason Reibold asks, is Lucho happy?
It looks here like the extra month is called Soul.
Oh.
So January, February, March, April, May, June, Soul, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Oh, they drop Soul in the middle, not at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is anybody happy?
I'm going to say Lucho is not happy.
Clearly not.
I mean,
yeah.
Kevin,
don't take it
are you
personally.
happy, Kevin?
Sure.
Grayson?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bet he's mostly happy. He's got like lots of money. That usually is a good start.
Clearly he's satisfied with how much money he has. Doesn't want any more.
Right.
He's desperately trying to earn less.
Maybe he wants less money. I don't know.
Has FCC offered him less money? So maybe that is the concern.
Do you think the problem is no one's ever asked Lucho, like, so are you happy?
Oh.
And that like maybe like there's like little things that are just wrong that we could fix if we just asked Lucho if he was happy.
Yeah, like his toenails.
Yeah. I don't know. How many athletes on a sports team would you say in a given year would report, yes, I'm happy right now? Percent wise.
30%.
Depends on the sport.
Yeah. And like how much winning they're doing, probably.
Yeah. Like there has to be some recognition that you are like literally in the midst of achieving your childhood dream. Like, I don't know how many, there's a handful, don't get me wrong. I don't know how many athletes are like, fuck, I got to go play football again. Like
that's usually like basketball and tall people where it's like they don't really love playing basketball. They've just been told their entire lives, well, you must play basketball.
I think it was Andre Agassi who said like he never loved tennis. He just like was really good at it and couldn't not play it.
That was Homer Bailey for the Reds too. Like he didn't really love baseball. It's just I throw a baseball real hard and I make enough money so I can go hunting in the off season.
Baseball is a good sport to be accidentally really good at. Those guaranteed contracts are pretty big.
Yeah. It's the only place in the world where being left-handed is seen as a massive, massive life hack.
It's worth a couple million right there.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question there, Jason, is no. I hope you're happy for having asked that question.
But I think he can be happy again. We can make Lucho happy again, I think.
I think so.
Well, I don't think we need to make him happy. I think he just needs to spend some time, get in his own head a little bit, figure it out, and realize what it was that made him happy here.
He just needs to look at some cat hang in there posters.
Yeah. Or maybe more pictures of that tifo that just had the heart. Just remember that. Yeah.
We should all tweet at him Kevin Denkey highlights. Just like, look what you could be playing with next year.
Or maybe
Lucho.
like Pat Noonan goes to his house and does like the card scene from Love Actually.
Yes. Oh man.
I don't know. Yeah, happiness. It's overrated anyway.
Yeah.
What a downer note to end the podcast on that would be. It's like in the holiday season. Are you happy?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Daniel Tosh had a stand-up bit about how money won't buy you happiness, but it will buy you a wave runner. And you've never seen an unhappy person on a wave runner. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope whoever asked that question's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hope they're happy with that answer.
Jason, what have you done to
They're
us?
happy with their investment in the Patreon. I don't know. Anyway, fuck Columbus.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. Also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.